gals, me Skeletal Devil here, and welcome back to another episode of Cursage Gaming. For today's episode, I'll be doing a highly requested one titled, My Friend Ethan. Without further ado, let's hop right into the story. So the story starts out with the player talking about his friend Zobriar, I mean Ethan. The player tells us that Ethan is his best good friend in the whole wide world. One day though, Ethan started acting off. The player described it as him being quite moody. This made the player very uncomfortable and caused the player to cut off all contact with Ethan. Fast forward to about a handful of weeks later, and the player decides to contact Ethan Zobriar. He or she calls him about 5 or 6 times around 11:26 p.m. to be precise. After this, Ethan sends the player an image titled AnswerMe.png. Upon clicking the image was a hyper-realistic image of a nude RE3 Mick Jill. Oh wait, I was looking at the wrong thing. Sorry guys and gals. Actually, the image was Ethan's face. His face was hyper-realistic and covered in blood. The player thought it must have been Photoshop, but quickly shrugged it off since Ethan's photoshopping skills were quite horrid. I can confirm this, guys and gals. Zobriar's photoshopping skills are about as good as his skills in Umbrella Corps. Bartholomew clicked on the image in hopes to delete it, but he or she saw another option. This other option was called Answer. Upon seeing this, the player quickly installed an antivirus software just in case it would give him or her a virus. After installing it, he or she clicked Answer, and it instantly caused his computer to call Ethan on Skype. Once the ghost of Meaden answered, he just whispered. Like he wasn't just talking very loud, guys and gals. He just was, yeah, guys and gals. Ethan then turned on his or her webcam, and only showed a small head shape. After that, Ethan Zobriar abruptly ended the call. A week later, the player received another call from Ethan. Ethan turned on his webcam again, but this time, he had no hair, and was covered in the same crimson red blood in the JPEG that the player was sent. Upon seeing his disgusted look, the call abruptly ended again. This of course creeped the player out and didn't want to go online for an entire month. The next day, the player received a call from multiple people called Please Answer in all caps. The player thought it was just going to be the same stuff from the night before, so she just ignored it. He or she tried to ignore it, but couldn't when the same hyper-realistic PSD showed up. The player tried shutting off his or her own phone, but couldn't, so they were forced to take out the battery. The player ran home to his computer and found out his desktop wallpaper had the hyper-realistic GIF of Ethan Girth Zobriar. The player undoubtedly was furious at this tomfoolery. Later at around 13:57, which is 1:57 in military time, just in case you guys and gals didn't know, the player thought he heard someone shuffling around the outside of their home. He saw a man that looked exactly like Ethan but was Irish. The player thought that since he or she lived in England that this was quite odd. Now the English bastard's parents weren't home, so he or she couldn't call them, and couldn't remember their number either. The player also couldn't go outside since he or she didn't have a key to his or her own home. Suddenly the player heard screams and didn't bother to peek outside, since it was normal to hear screams in his or her own neighborhood. The player then poked his or her own head outside, and to his or her own terror, Ethan Griffin Meaden Zobriar was gone. This horrifying encounter made the player quite hungry and ran downstairs to grab a filet mignon, which was prepared directly from the hands of Gordon J. Ramsay himself. Upon eating the oven-roasted steak, the player wondered why his or her own parents were gone for so long. The player realized that they'd been gone for an entire 2 days, 48 hours, 72 minutes, and 96 seconds. The player heard something walking in his or her own house. The player hid under the kitchen table and looked outside. The player saw a hyper-realistic bloody Ethan Girth Meaden Machinima director Zobriar holding the dead corpses of his or her own parents. Both of them had lost an eye and a leg. Ethan spotted the player and started trekking towards them. Ethan gouged out the player's right eye and discombobulates his left leg. Ethan then whispered in the player's ear. That leg is useful now. You don't need that. Ethan Gurthamiden, Machinima director and founder of EB Games Zobriar YT, being the absolute redditor that he is, then tears off the player's leg and leaves him with the dead bodies of his parents on the kitchen table. The player then concludes this terrifying story, saying that he is alive and we shouldn't worry. Alrighty then, that was quite a pretty good gaming creepypasta. The character of Ethan Zobek made the story quite disturbing. Like every time he or she would appear, my pants would immediately be caked in a brown liquidy substance. The murder of the parents' players made the story quite depressing, and I actually cried while reading this. The dissimulation of the player at the end gave me all types of chills at the end of reading this. Even though this is quite disturbing, I have some slight issues regarding its realism. The inclusion of Skype took away all realism due to the fact that every Ethan in the world uses Discord as their primary calling device, the second being Reddit. Also, Zobriar in real life looks nothing like the Ethan of this story. And if you're wondering what Zobriar looks like IRL, he looks like this. Other than the realism being slightly unbelievable, this was still quite a pristine horror novel, and is definitely a must-read. So what would you guys and gals rate this? Comment down below. If you guys want more elegant content, go check out Typical Ultrates podcast, the Off Topics podcast. Links to the creepypasta and shit down in the description below. This has been another episode of Cursage Gaming, and this is me, Skull Devil, and I'm out!